This is Nier Automata. This is the sword Virtuous Treaty. I think this sword looks ridiculous and stupid. Therefore, I am going to try and make it. The forging process was quite straightforward. I started with a large block of EN9 steel and simply hammered on it until it was the shape that I wanted. I specifically chose EN9 steel because it is tempered at about 500 degrees Celsius, giving me ample wiggle room in the tempering process that I was planning to use. The forging required to reduce a 20 by 40 mm cross-section down to an 8 by 35 mm cross-section was around 10 hours worth of work. When I finally get a power hammer, I am not going to take it for granted. In-game, the sword is gargantuanly massive, so for the sake of being able to make this project, I have decided to scale it down to a mere 1 meter. According to the calculations I did, the blade ended up needing to be 73 centimeters long. I used some draw filing to help define the contours and ensure the nice sharp line between the beveled part and the flap. Due to the ridiculous shape of this sword, the blade and the tang are actually not continuous, therefore they had to be forged separately. The tang was a mere 3 or 4 hours worth of work to forge, and then another hour or so to grind. The first of the absurd and strange fittings that this sword has started off as a large block of square steel. After the desired amount was cut off, its markings were placed on each end, as much material as possible to be cut off was cut off, before being ground and then filed. With enough stubbornness, you do not actually need a mill to cut slots. This next part is going to go around the previous part. Starting with a large piece of mild steel flat bar, I hammered it round and then welded the seams shut. Once it was a closed loop, one end was widened out so that it would fit over the end of the previous part. The next of the absurd fittings looks fairly circular, so I'm going to lathe it. In order to try and save some weight on this absurdly large sword, I decided to make the tuba out of aluminium. Metal casting is an area I'm incredibly unpracticed at, so I didn't bother trying to make the pattern very similar to the end result I wanted, merely a vague notion somewhere in the same vicinity as what I wanted. The handle is made out of oak, which I planed flat and then chiseled a channel down the middle so that the tang that I forged earlier would fit into it. However, I forgot to account for the fact that the fittings also have to fit on the tang, so I lost several inches worth of space on the inside. But I won't tell anyone if you won't. Unfortunately, my camera died during the quench, so here is this instead. This trough is full of molten lead. No, it isn't as poisonous as people think. As I said earlier, EN9 is usually tempered at between 5 and 600 degrees Celsius, so I'm aiming for about 450. After tempering it for about an hour, I pulled it out and brushed off all the lead. Again, not as poisonous as people think. Poisonous, but not that poisonous. With the heat treatment done, begins the long and arduous process of cleaning and sharpening. The small triangular part which fixes the blade onto the handle was made out of this piece of EN45 steel, specifically because I had it lying around and I didn't want to look for anything else. I used 2 small tack welds to fix 2 pieces together before cutting them out and grinding them to shape, to make sure that I had 2 almost identical pieces. "6mm steel pins were used to help fix the blade onto the triangle parts to ensure that this thing was not entirely held together by welds. After polishing these small fittings up to about 400 grit, they were thoroughly cleaned with acetone, in the form of nail varnish remover, before being soaked and brushed with gun blue, in order to turn them black. The pommel is made out of another large block of steel which had a 20mm hole bored partway through it, which was then forced open until it was the same shape as the handle. This drift was specifically made for the purpose of widening this hole. I decided to omit the several hours worth of grinding, cleaning, polishing, blacking that was done to the previous block of steel, but rest assured it is the same piece. I am slightly annoyed that it is not shiny enough. You may think that this is shiny, but I think that it could be more shiny.